This video is sponsored by sellcashier.com. They compare iPhone prices on the internet and give you their instant quote and the most cash for your iPhone. Hey guys, this is Ed with Aquarium. So another benchmarking video in the season, and by season I mean the fall release of the new iPhones. I must apologize in advance, I'm a little biased against these, and of course I say jokingly only because I'm just a fan of smaller phones. These are just too big for me because these are a larger and the largest ever made, and this is starting on the left. This is the 8 Plus, this is the XS Max, and this is the 11 Pro Max. So they represent three different eras of cell phones in the mobile technology world. I think that these are all great and amazing phones. They will perform amazingly well. The 8 Plus has the A11 Bionic chip, which is a great CPU, and that CPU will literally haul ass. This is the XS Max that has the A12 Bionic, and it will also perform extremely well. And this is this year's flagship, and this year's flagship is the iPhone 11 Pro Max that has the A13 Bionic. Now, what I also want to mention, and it will be very important when we get the benchmarking results from the apps that we're going to use, which I'll talk about in a second as well, but the iPhone 8 Plus is actually losing this comparison to another extent. I'm only hypothesizing because I don't know what the results are going to be, but this phone of this entire lineup is the only one that has the 3-core GPU, which is the graphics processing unit, and it also carries 3 GB of RAM, whereas the XS Max and the 11 Pro Max will carry each 4-core GPUs and the 4 gigs of RAM. So both of these, 4 gigs of RAM and 4-core GPUs. So the first and foremost, we're going to start with Geekbench 5. We're going to test the CPU and see how it performs with this app here, which is pretty powerful. Unfortunately, in the 5th release, they removed the battery drain test that I really like because I think it was very indicative of the battery capacity and how it performs. So we're going to go ahead and start with the CPU test first, and we'll see how these compare side by side. Alright guys, the results are up. 11 Pro Max finished the first, and that's of course very much so expected for this year's flagship device, and it actually finished several seconds earlier before the XS Max, and then 8 Plus took the longest. Of course, that's not surprising. What I didn't tell you is that we will likely see the difference, a major difference between the 8 Plus and the XS Max in the 3D Mark visual benchmark, because it has less RAM and it has a GPU that's just not as powerful. It only has 3 cores versus the 4 cores in these two devices here. The disparity between the 8 Plus and the XS Max is actually about 200 points, and you have another 200 points in the XS Max versus the 11 Pro Max category. So pretty standard for something that was released over the 3-year period, so 1 year apart between each phone, and I think this is great. But if you also look at the multi-core score, this does great, this does fantastic, and this does spectacular. 3,544 points. So this is pretty remarkable. Certainly a winner. This is the flagship by Apple. Alright guys, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run the 3D Mark Slingshot Extreme. We're going to visualize, and this is specifically for those who would like to see what these apps are doing and how you can visualize the performance, how the frames per second drop, and you can actually visualize the delays in processing. So my contention is going to be that the 8 Plus is going to be somewhere around maybe 15 frames per second, and the XS Max will pretty much exhibit no lag at all, with the 11 of course outperforming the other two. And of course this is not just an 11, this is the 11 Pro Max, which is Apple's current 2019 flagship. Let's go ahead and run this. Alright guys, and the results are up, and what we're seeing here on the screens here is that the score disparity is much higher than Geekbench 5. 2,869 points for the iPhone 8 Plus, 3,573 points for iPhone XS Max, and 5,437 points for the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And the difference between these two guys over here is much less than what you can observe between the 8 Plus and the XS Max, which are, by the way, also 1 year apart, just like the XS Max and 11 Pro Max. And of course, we couldn't expect any less, but what it tells us is that we certainly expect that the advancement in technology is probably happening a little bit faster nowadays than it was a couple of years ago, and this is probably why we're seeing a greater difference between these two phones again and versus 8 Plus and the XS Max. 8 Plus scores much lower than both of these, of course, because it only has the 3-core GPU and 3 gigs of RAM, and also the A11 Bionic. So this jump in technology is pretty obvious here. Alright guys, another benchmarking test, and it's really a more objective performance test mobile that you can actually see the results of the individual components. What this test does is that it really tries to get you to understand how the individual internals of these phones work together, that being the CPU, the GPU, the memory, and it also tests for the write and the read speed from the internal storage. Let's go ahead and run this. I like this app simply because it's very simple. It uses simple graphics, yet it provides fairly accurate results. Alright guys, and we finally got the results from the performance test mobile. Going to scroll all the way up to where it says CPU, because that's where we want to start looking at the results. And we're going to do this on all three phones here. And of course the highest score is going to be the one of the iPhone 11 Pro Max on your rate. Scores close to 700,000, whereas the CPU score on this is close to 500,000, and the 8 Plus scores about 460,000. So again, the disparity is very comparable to what we saw in Geekbench 5, although there must be slight correction made because this is the third performance test that was actually ran on these phones, and they're slightly heated up. And remember, as heat dissipates out of the battery as it discharges, it actually slows down the CPU. That's why you want to make sure that your CPU on your computer is properly cooled at all times. And of course the storage write and the read speed, and the score is of course different. Smaller disparity between the XS Max and 11 Pro Max, hence you're getting a significantly lower score on the 8 Plus, or it could be just as we compared the 10 against the 10R against the 11, and we actually did see a great disparity in storage write and read speed on the 10 versus the 10R, and I think the similar situation is happening here between the 8 Plus and the XS Max. Disparity is not as large between the XS Max and 11 Pro Max, simply because they're a year apart but not 2 years apart, and they're newer, so we like that. Alright guys, and finally the memory. 8 Plus is on the lower end here for another reason, not only because it has 3 gigs of RAM of course and that it's older, but 3 gigs obviously lose to 4 gigs that you have in the XS Max and 11 Pro Max. And that was your performance test mobile. These phones are all great. These phones are going to work almost equally well because you won't see the difference, and this is exactly what we're going to test in the last comparison test in this video, which is going to be YouTube. Alright guys, going to try YouTube here. This is a very great visual tool to figure out what's going to happen to your phone on a daily basis when you're looking at those YouTube videos and also browsing Instagram and opening Facebook, posting on Twitter, and so on. I'm going to be as simultaneous as I possibly can on all three of these. So ready, set, go. And 11 Pro Max is the winner, XS Max goes second, and 8 Plus is the third one, which is totally expected. 11 Pro wins here. It's the newest device, and this is where you're getting the most performance out of. This is going to serve you very well for probably the next 3 years if you decide to get one. Definitely the winner in this comparison here. XS Max is still very, very strong device. If you find it for a good amount of money, make sure it's not fake, make sure that it's real, and it's gonna be as smooth as I'm scrolling up and closing out these apps. Out of the memory, 8 Plus, I don't like the button. Wouldn't recommend it because it's not getting 2 years out. So if you can find a XS Max for decent money, that's what you should go for. XS Max is a solid device. They're really all solid devices, but XS Max is definitely better because you got to look into the future. Get rid of that button. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here with me, looking at these benchmarks. I will see you in my next video very, very soon. I wanted to tell you about sellcashier.com. So you just got your new iPhone. What will you do with your old one? You may be thinking of selling it on eBay, Craigslist, and so on, and it is definitely a hassle. Now you don't have to do that. Now you can sell it through sellcashier.com. They compare the actual prices of iPhones and give you the best price for your iPhone that you are trying to sell. And the good thing is that you are guaranteed the best rate. You also get a free shipping label. Thank you for watching, and please check out sellcashier.com.